I'm going to show you how you can customize the Windows Sandbox environment using custom configuration files. So normally to open the Sandbox, you can just open the Start menu and type Windows Sandbox, and that will open you up a clean Windows Sandbox environment. This environment has things like internet access, so we can make connections to the internet. We've also got clipboard access, so if we've got files on our host machine, we can copy them into our Windows Sandbox so we can run them, as well as a couple of other things in the built-in sandbox. Now we can modify the behavior of quite a few things by creating custom WSB files, which are associated to the Windows Sandbox. So if we open up a file explorer and then make sure that we have got file name extensions enabled, we can then create a new file and we can call this sandbox no network.wsb, and that will create us a WSB file. Now all you need to do is right click and then modify it with whatever text editor is your preference. I'm just going to use VS Code. So we've got our sandbox no network WSB file. Now in here, I'm going to paste the configuration. Now all of the configuration that I use in this video will be linked in the blog post in the description, so you can just copy and paste whatever part's out. So in this one, we've got our opening configuration declaration, and then we've got our networking, which is set to disable. We've got our protected client, which is a built-in command, which if we enable that, it gives the client extra protection, or it gives the host extra protection from anything running within the virtual sandbox. And then we've also got clipboard redirection, which I've set to disabled. So if we save that and then run this no network WSB file, it will open up a Windows Sandbox. And then again, if we try and use anything such as the internet, we actually don't have an IP address, we can't get to the network, and if we try and copy files, we can't paste them in either because the folder redirection is disabled. Now we can go a bit further than this, so this is our no network one, which is pretty isolated. We can create a new file and we'll call this sandbox folder redirection.wsb, and then in here we can map some folders. So in this example, I'm mapping the desktop folder on my host machine to the desktop of the sandbox, and again mapping the downloads folder on the host machine to the downloads of the sandbox. And then for read only, we've got that enabled as true, so the sandbox can access these two folders, but they can't actually write back to them. So if we now run our folder redirection, it will open us up a Windows Sandbox with that configuration file, and then we'll see if we run a command prompt, we have a network address because we didn't disable the network adapter. And now we can see we've got the same files that are on our desktop, which is map. So we've got our desktop files, and if we open up a file explorer and then come over to downloads, we can see we've also got our downloads, but we can't actually write back to it. So if we try and create a file, we don't have permission. We can just view the files and then run the files. So in this case, we'll just install Google Chrome, but we don't actually want to do that, so we'll just close it. So that's how we can redirect files and folders. Now we can actually do some automation using logon commands. So if I create a new instance called sandbox logon command, and then give it the WSB, and then in here we'll just run a single logon command, which you can only really do a one-liner. So if we run notepad.exe, what's the wrong extension? Windows Sandbox, and then when we run it, it will open up a sandbox, and it should open Notepad for us because it has executed that command. Now, what I find is this command it's quite limited in what it can do. So my preference is to not run a single command, but I run an entire PowerShell script. So in here, I've got my script. So what this will do is the single command is just executing PowerShell. and it will execute a command under C Windows Sandbox script.ps1. So if I save that, but then come to my C drive and then create a new folder called Windows Sandbox, because I don't really like sharing my entire downloads or documents or desktop file with the sandbox. I like to create a standalone directory and then just share in a single directory. So if we've got the sandbox in here, we'll do new file and we'll call this script.ps1. And then if we edit it, and then for this script, we'll just get it to start edge, open up some files, and then it will run the Google Chrome installer. So if I save that and then just grab the installer and also put it in this directory, because it's running from C Windows Sandbox, but this will be in the sandbox. So if I come back to my script, we've got our logon command, but what we need to do is now map that folder that I've just created. So we can link multiple commands here in our configuration parameters. So we've got our mapped folder, which is mapping C Windows Sandbox on our host computer to C Windows Sandbox in the sandbox with read only as true. And then once it's mapped that, it will then run a PowerShell command and execute script.ps1 within the Windows Sandbox. So if I save that and then run the logon command sandbox environment, what this should do is initiate a PowerShell script, which it looks like it has. It's opened up PowerShell, Notepad, File Explorer, and then now it is automatically installing Google Chrome or within our sandbox environment. So this is great for testing the same thing over and over again. If you're making, so say if you're installing an application and you want to test the automation, you can just script it, and every time you open the sandbox logon command, it will run it and it will execute it exactly the same every time. So now we've got Google Chrome in our sandbox. And again, if we just close it, it'll discard everything. And we can just open a normal sandbox and everything is reset back to defaults. But we've still got all of our custom configuration files, so we can make as many of these as we want. And then every time we run it, it'll just initiate that script. And then it'll open up PowerShell, it'll automatically start installing Google Chrome, and whatever we want it to. Now this script that I've got, obviously, that we are executing, which is in the C Windows Sandbox, this is a very basic script. It doesn't really do anything, but this could be hundreds or thousands of lines of PowerShell code long. It could initiate other applications, other languages, however you want. This is just an example script. So that's how you can improve the usage of your Windows Sandbox environment, by either locking it down more than default or creating automation to get it to help you along in your job. These are just a couple of the options that are available to configure. I'll leave a link in the description, which links to the Microsoft article with all of the different configuration options which are available and their values, so you can identify which ones to use and which ones might work best for your use case.